You're listening to the Not Just Numbers podcast, a conversation with mathematicians on their work and their lives to get to know them and discuss common biases and misconceptions. Hi everybody and welcome to the last episode of It's Not Just Numbers for this academic year. Today next to me there is as usual Marit.
Hello.
And we have two special guests for this last episode, two emeritus professors at our institute, Trentelman.
Thank you.
And Henk Brewer.
Hi.
Today we wanted to talk with them about how the landscape in mathematics changed and what was their experience like having spent so many years at the university. So thank you very much for joining us. In this podcast, usually we start by getting to know you as people. So more about what has motivated you, what you do outside mathematics. And usually the first thing that we ask you is a brief introduction on who you are and what is your mathematical research about. Henk, would you like to start?
My interest for mathematics and physics and astronomy already started very young. And I was stimulated by my father, who was my primary school teacher, and we looked up to stars. But I was also interested in Isaac Asimov, who wrote about a wonder world of atoms. And I at school, I always liked so very much the integration of math and physics, mechanics. And when I came to Groningen, I studied mathematics, physics, and astronomy. So that's how I came into the world. And basically, that has not changed for me during my whole career. Many other things have changed, but this is the basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So quite a broad range of interests. That's nice to hear.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you were doing the research, on what aspect did you focus? Did you focus more on the physics or astronomy?
No. The basis was mathematics.
Okay.
And from mathematics, you go to the satellites of Jupiter, or you go to mechanical problems or semi-classical quantum problems. So it's kind of eclectic. But it was a theory that I was helping to develop. And from that theory, very natural, all kinds of things. I've also done things in biology.
Oh.
It's also often that you meet on a conference, you meet a person and he listens to you. He says, oh, can you help me to use the same kind of thinking here? And then we wrote a paper.
Ah, that's nice.
Yeah.
More about also the universality of mathematics.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Mathematics is very universal.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. Yeah, Harry, can you tell us a little bit?
Yes, well, I studied mathematics in Groningen from 1974 until 1981. And during my final project in applied mathematics, I was supervised by a very famous professor at that time. His name is Jan Willems. He died in 2013. And he was a professor in what is called systems and control. And this is a branch of applied mathematics that deals with, well, if I have to explain that in an easy way, with trying to make physical systems behave in a way that you want them to behave. And a physical system is, for example, an airplane, missile, a supertanker, the electricity grid in the Netherlands. Well, these physical systems do not behave well if you don't do anything, but you have to interconnect them with a device which is called a controller. And thinking about how to develop such controllers is a piece of applied mathematics that systems and control deals with. That's basically the most easy way to explain what I have been doing in my research.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah.
I was wondering, because you're emeritus professor, so you're very far in your mathematical career. When you were studying mathematics, did you already know that you wanted to pursue a career in this field, or? I see Henk shaking his head.
We did just what we found fun.
Yes.
We followed our bliss.
Yeah.
And there was no. When I was a first year student, I was not thinking of being ever a professor or something like that.
No.
It just happened.
Well, at that time, there was also a different time regarding studying something technical, science. then you got a job. So we didn't even worry about it.
Yeah, the same for me. I just liked mathematics a lot, and we did what we were supposed to do: study, do examinations. And I remember that even when I finished my master project in 1981, I thought that I was going to be a high school teacher in mathematics. But then I pursued my PhD degree. I did a PhD project with this Professor Jan Willems. And then suddenly I found out that I really liked studying all the time. I was happy when I had things on my desk that I could study. And I thought, it would be nice to do that my entire life. And if you want to do that your entire life, you have to pursue a career in academia, in a university.
Yeah.
Is there something specific about mathematics that sparks your joy when you have all these things to do and to study?
It's very hard to explain. Mathematics is such a beautiful field. I mean, it has a certain elegance like classical music or art. And it's very hard to explain that. But it was really something that I enjoyed doing all the time.
It's something that you feel, right? It sparks this kind of emotion.
Yeah. It's simplicity and meanwhile that you deal with difficult problems and try to solve these problems in an elegant and simple way. That's the force of mathematics. Henk, don't you think so?
Yeah, I also find it a little bit Zen-like, mathematics. And also, when you do not do mathematics, but when you have a problem in your mind, the problem sometimes solves itself when you are doing the dishes or walking the dog.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you know how to do it.
Yeah.
When I'm doing mathematics, I'm often in a flow, and my family members, they know that from my looks. So I never focus. And they all the time busy, with something else. With something else.
Yeah.
Remaining on the same theme, how did you decide to study mathematics, and what you studied? Was it really matching your expectation, or your experience from school was different as it is right now from the experience that you get at the university, the type of mathematics you see and the type of problems you're actually studying?
So the question is basically, why did I start studying mathematics?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you're like 17 or 16 years old, you do many things and you decide many things, and later on you have no idea why. Yeah. So I remember that. The first thing is that I had two mathematics teachers in high school, which were really very nice people. They had a good sense of humor and a dry sense of humor, and they were very good in explaining things. And we also had these subjects like complex numbers. Which complex numbers? You need. What is the square root of -1? That I found that very intriguing. That is possible in the first place. And then the thing that really made me decide to do mathematics was that the father of one of my friends said, "Well, if you really want to do something difficult, then you should do mathematics." And then I thought, that's it then. Yeah.
So you like a challenge?
It's just as a challenge, yeah.
Oh, that's funny to hear. Was it similar for you, Henk?
Now, when I was at high school, I like to boast a little bit now, because I was the best student of all school. So I wanted to go to the university, and then mathematics was easy. And then the dean of the school came along, and he said, "What are you going to study?" We went along the entire class, and then he said, "Broer, mathematics, I suppose." I said, "Well, why don't you write that down?" And then I came at the university, and I saw that you could study mathematics, physics, and astronomy. So I was enlightened. My teachers also were very inspiring. We had teachers that interchanged each other on mathematics and physics every year. So they knew the program very well, and the differential integral calculus, if you learn that both from mechanics and from mathematics, you get an enrichment that nowadays students don't have.
Yeah.
That's something that I fought hard against, but in vain.
Yeah.
In vain.
It's nice to see the connections between the subjects, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't have this in school.
No. That's you are deprived. Yes.
Yes.
Well, many subjects that we encountered in high school are not taught anymore in high schools these days.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So like integration and things like that.
I was in the beginning of this century was in 2 ministerial committees trying to set up school programs, and I tried very hard to integrate again mathematics and physics teachers and programs, but they didn't want that.
Why not?
Yeah, that's interesting. There is some kind of resistance against technical things. So they want to talk about climate, but they don't know really. They've never seen energy in a bullet that goes through the air. So it's very distracted from the concrete scribbling on paper. And that's the kind of thinking they have. So they want to talk about sustainability, but they don't know any of the physical ingredients that you have. So they read things from the internet and they connect it to some story. And I tried to stop that, but it didn't work.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate, yes.
Yeah.
So did I understand correctly that there is some focus on the very high level discussion on societal challenges like sustainability or climate, but not that much focus on setting up then the actual basis that you need to understand deeply and
but they were also doing modeling, but they were not doing modeling like we, that you write something on paper, you know formulas, you know the kind of theory that you have to look into. No, they have modeling that was a computer program, and they did not know what the computer program did. But you could just type in some stuff, and then an answer came out, and then they were very happy. And it was some kind of linear differential equation. It was just ridiculous. What the students like and what they have fun to do was more important than the disciplinary thing that we had to swallow.
Yeah.
And I think the whole business suffers from that. That's my nostalgic.
But I think that you make a very good point.
Thank you.
Yeah. Like having experienced the high school program, there is not that much interdisciplinary.
No, that should be.
Yeah, I had the fortunate. I was fortunate enough to have one course where that was interdisciplinary. So we had projects working on stars, for instance, and then multiple projects, like multiple disciplines would come together, and that was super interesting and very nice and way more fun than only learning, this is what an integral is, but not learning what an integral can do.
No, that's true. That's also true.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your efforts in
thank you.
the expectations of studying mathematics. So you said you expected it to be challenging, and you expected it to be super interesting. Did those things perceptions change over time, or did studying mathematics meet up to the expectations that you had when you started?
Well, to be honest, when I started studying mathematics, I didn't have many expectations. I just wanted to study something, which turned out to be mathematics. And then in the first year we had courses like set theory and very abstract things. Like what is it? I mean, I cannot explain all these things. But we were taught by Boland. Boland was he already died. He was a professor in mathematics and old school professor. He used to smoke, but not in class, but in the breaks. And he smoked Caballero cigarettes, and he inhaled very deeply. And then what I remember is that when he started again after the break, after half an hour, the smoke would still come from his lungs. That's a small anecdote. I will never forget that. He looked also very unhealthy. But he gave he taught these funny courses, that were very intriguing. And that's If you ask me, did it meet your expectations? I really did not have any expectations. It just came to me, and I found it fascinating. And all these kinds of different mathematics, analysis, linear algebra, all kinds of different characters. In the end, my interest never disappeared. And then in the end, I ran into Jan Willems and did control theory, and that's where my professional career started. Yeah. Is that a little bit satisfying answer.
Yeah,
It
any
is.
answer is good, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, fast forward 30 years, it resonates a lot with my experience. Like I only knew what high school mathematics was. In Italy, if you do the gymnasium with scientific focus, then you have a lot more maths, and then you do differential calculus and integrals, but very basically. You use them a bit in elementary mechanics, but besides that, you just do computations.
Yeah.
And I remember the fact that they explained to me vectors as these things that live on a space on their own, and then you can apply to a point, but you don't have to draw at a point necessarily. For me, it was mind-blowing. I wasn't expecting this thing that were starting being pulled apart and completely dissecting into their essence, and somehow it became so fascinating to understand what was going on. And so I relate a lot with this surprise of seeing all these abstract things coming out and all this general structure that could explain what is really at the heart of the problems and the computations we were doing.
Yeah.
And then seeing them crossing boundaries between these various courses instead of being just lots of silos. It was something that really fascinated me and still fascinates me since.
Yeah.
Well, for me, this guy Boland was a very inspiring guy, and he brought culture.
Yeah.
In Groningen, we had only calculus and analysis, and it was fun, but also a little bit boring. And what helped me through things was geometry, projective geometry, fine geometry, and topology.
Yes.
And algebraic topology, that you can distinguish a sphere from a torus by one number, which is just a hole through the torus. And then also the combination of topology and analysis in differential geometry. And I discovered it slowly, but it fit completely with what I already knew. It was an extension and enrichment of the thing that I did, and also the fact that you could apply all these things in physics. That many of these things you cannot do relativity theory without differential geometry.
Yeah.
And of course, we had also an inspiring person, because the professor of differential geometry that I met first was Gerritsen, and he was very old. But then Takens came, and Takens is something like Willems, you know. And I had a lot of profit from the fact that I studied for a while with Takens.
Yes.
And after a while, our paths diverged. He didn't want me to follow him, and I did not want him in my neighborhood too much. So only at the end of my career, we wrote a book together. But this entire field is extremely interesting, and that's also where I meet other people like you and theoretical physicists, and that's intriguing and very, very nice.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you mention projective geometry, yeah, because that's a very simple example. That mathematics starts from certain axioms, and in projective geometry, there's one axiom that says every pair of lines intersect. And intuitively, that's nonsense. But if you start with that from the start, something that is true, then you can really prove mathematically the most fascinating things. And I mean, the fact that you can do that is already so beautiful.
And in addition to that, I could say that projective geometry is trying to capture perspective. When you look at perspective, you have the rails of a train, but they meet.
Yeah.
And that they try to capture that kind of thing, perspective.
Yeah.
Nice. Never thought about it that way.
It was fun, huh?
Yeah. More like perspective geometry then.
Well, it was created like that.
Yeah.
Now, what you both said, it's completely unrelated what I'm going to say, but what you both said made me curious. So, have you known each other basically since your master, bachelor studies, PhD? Because you mentioned the same professor, so I wonder at which point did you meet?
Yeah, well, Henk was a student assistant when I was a student. So he's, I think you are 2 or 3 years older than I am.
74.
74. He's 6 years older than I am. Now you can compute yourself.
So it was your TA?
I'm still looking quite young, I suppose.
He must have been my teaching assistant, somewhere. yeah, yeah. But indeed, Floris Stakens was also a professor when I was a student. Yeah, yeah. He was one of these famous people in the institute.
I recognize his name from the Floris Stakens seminar.
Also, he already died, unfortunately.
Yeah, 2010.
But so did you guys so you were his teaching assistant, but at some point you became like colleagues, or you were both PhD students, or I don't know what is like the layout.
Well, I think what was your PhD period, Henk?
From 74 to 79.
Yeah, then I didn't even start yet. I started in 81.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and when I had done my PhD, it was very hard to get a job, and then I was even hired as a teacher at the gymnasium, at the Predieningsgymnasium.
Groningen.
Yes, but then at the more or less the same time, I got half-time job as a teacher in science and society.
Here in the institute.
Yeah, and then after that there was
with Tom Snijders.
With Tom Snijders, yes. Yeah. And then after that there came a job available. I think it was not Boland's job, but it was some other job. Mm-hmm. And there was quite a lot of competition, but they still chose me. And I stayed all my time in Groningen.
Yeah, I remember that I did this science and society project, and
it was very interesting.
Tom and you were supervisors.
Yeah,
but I didn't know that you already also had another job in high school.
Yeah, but yeah.
Just a curiosity, what was this science and society about?
Yeah, but science and society.
Yeah, it was basically a kind of. Philosophy of what we are doing, and that we are defiling nature, that we are getting money from NATO, that we are, without knowing it, usually scientists don't know that we are involved in the military-industrial complex. And it was a kind of way to make students aware of the fact that you can think that you have clean hands, but you have not clean hands.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's very nice. So it's kind of reflecting on societal issue and the context around mathematics.
But also there was also philosophy and history of mathematics. So we tried to say, well, it is not just you make an exercise on slides of paper. Mm-hmm. And some students didn't like it because they had a very idealistic frame of what they were doing, and they didn't want to know that somewhere in NATO there was some money flowing into exactly this.
Yeah.
But also they also just wanted to do mathematics, and they found these kind of subjects like science and society a waste of time.
Waste of time.
We still have this, right? We have a course that is mathematics in its environment.
Yeah,
exactly.
And,
yes, it's still a remnant of this.
Yeah, but it's not about where does funding come from.
No,
not at all. It's more about what makes mathematics beautiful, or
it's propaganda again. So what we were trying to do was making a little bit of anti-propaganda, saying, well, you can very much, please go on with what you do, but think of the fact that there are more dimensions.
Yeah, I think we are trying to revise that course exactly in the spirit of making it, first of all, more related to mathematics, and also bringing more awareness on the way we present mathematics to people, the history of mathematics, and the way mathematics interacts with actual societal problems and societal partners. So maybe this will change, but it's a very slow process.
Yeah. It's a very slow process.
Thanks a lot. Let me steer a bit the discussion before we go back a bit to the history. And so one thing that we'd like to ask every of our guests in the first part of the podcast is what they do outside mathematics.
Yeah.
And so I'm very curious to know what are your other hobbies and passions, Harry?
Well, I'm very much into bicycle racing. Huh?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So more or less, it's more or less become an obsession. I own like 5 or 4 road bikes, and I cycle around 12,000 kilometers a year.
Wow.
My God.
Yeah, that's quite a lot. Not by myself only, but also with a group of people of my age, and they're really strong people. Like yesterday, we cycled with 10 people to Bakkeveen. Have an average speed of 30 kilometers an hour, and then I feel very satisfied in the evening.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Do you also have these fancy carbon fiber bikes?
Oh, yes, certainly. Yeah. And also what is called a gravel bike. Huh? You can cycle in the woods and on unpaved roads.
Oh, nice. So you do also outdoor biking, like in the woods.
Yeah. I don't want to get into too much details, but last Saturday I cycled on the Veluwe. I even saw a wolf.
Oh. I see.
It must have been a wolf because there was no owner, so it was not a dog. Yeah.
Was it close by?
200 meters or something.
Okay, so you still could cycle fast away.
Yeah.
Because there have been announcements of wolves having troubles with people, or at least dogs.
But I must admit that I was a little bit afraid because there was nobody else around. I was just in the middle of the woods, and well, that's my big hobby. I'm still involved in writing a book with my former colleagues about a piece of research that we've been doing the last 5 years.
Is the one with Henk?
With Henk and Kanatja, yeah.
So you know Henk van Waarde because it was in our one of our first episodes. I'm talking to our listeners.
Yeah, I understand. He must have explained what research he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's about that research,
That's why I see you every now and then in his office.
Exactly, yeah.
Nice. And what about you, Henk?
Well, I'm also writing books, popular books, but I thought the question was more about what you have done parallel to your study. I have always been very fond of music. I'm playing organ with my hands and my feet.
Oh, cool.
And I
sing.
Oh. And yes, in the Groninger Mozart ensemble nowadays. Oh. But I've also brown belt judo.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Impressive.
Yes. So don't worry about that. I forgot most of the things. So yes, but music is kind of my second life. But popularization of math, I see it also a little bit as a hobby because it's not counting on your CV so much. But I've written quite a lot of books which popularize mathematics. Still working on that, also with Marcello.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so that I think that's worthwhile to do.
Must be like, I don't know what kind of popular, like how much mathematics will be involved in those books, but I can imagine that it is difficult to write about mathematics for a broader audience than just mathematicians in a sense, or is it not?
Yeah, we tried. I wrote one book on optics, on geometric optics, the optics of light rays. And it was inspired very much by Minard. That's an author of books on physics in nature. And he writes about the setting sun and the fact that the sun can be cut by blind zones. And he explains that. And we have taken that up and made differential geometry out of it. But then also we came along Bernoulli's brachistogron, which is the curve of shortest time. And we couldn't integrate that in a book. So there's one chapter on the cycloid. And after that, at some moment, it becomes more difficult. It becomes differential geometry and Hamiltonian mechanics. But it's quite fun.
Yeah.
And we are now writing a book on oscillations.
Yeah.
Oscillatory phenomena, springs, and pendula, and so on, and many more things. And try to keep it, say, at high school level to start in. To get in the entrance level, we try to have at high school level.
Yeah, right. Nice.
Yeah,
that must be super interesting. Yeah.
It is fun because you have to remind yourself all the time, you cannot use this, you cannot use that. You have to actually give this formula out. And like we thought we did it, and then we send it to the referees. And then we got back, but here you're assuming that they know trigonometry, and here you're assuming some linear algebra, and then bang, we had to add a billion more.
American students know even less than European students.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
We also realized that we were targeting our idea of high school mathematics, but that's not universal across continents.
That's true.
But okay, we are trying.
Yeah. Thank you both for sharing a little bit about your personal life. We've invited you here to talk a little bit about being an emeritus professor and like your mathematical career and how things might or might not have changed over the past couple of decades. So I have first a very maybe more definitional question to ask. Because when I started studying, I thought that every person who gave me a lecture was a professor. And then I became a little bit older, and then sometimes I had to mail somebody, and then it would say associate professor or assistant professor. And then I was like, oh, there are different types of professors. And now you guys are here, you're emeritus professors. Yeah. Could one of you maybe explain to me what all the different terms are?
Yeah. The first thing I have to say is that when we started our career, it was a different system. But let me just explain how it is right now. When you want to work in the university as a teacher and a researcher, you first have to do your PhD. You have to be a doctor in mathematics, and then with a lot of luck, you can become an assistant professor. That's the first step. An assistant professor in mathematics in an institute, and then you already teach, and you do research. You try doing research means that you have to write papers about mathematics, solving certain interesting problems. And when are these problems interesting? Well, when other people find them interesting, in the sense that these papers are published in scientific journals. And when you manage to write a sufficient amount of research papers, you can, after a couple of years, after 5 years, you can apply for associate professorship.
You have to write proposals as well.
Right.
And you have to have PhD students.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you also have to attract money, otherwise you're dead, so to say. And you have to supervise in collaboration with full professors, PhD students.
Yeah.
But when you also have to learn how to walk over water.
Yeah, a lot of qualifications.
Fly.
Here. Yeah.
Now that was a joke, but then you can become associate professor, and then it goes on. Yeah, you have to write even more scientific papers. You have to become more or less well known in the research community internationally. Supervise more PhD students, attract more and more money, and also be a very good teacher. And when time comes, after again 6 years, you can apply for full professorship. Then you become a full professor, like Henk and I were. And when you have reached that goal, you have to continue with what you were doing, doing research, write papers, supervise PhD students. But you can also then be the promoter of the PhD student. You get this gown that you wear during ceremonies and give people the doctoral degree. So there are 3 stages: assistant professor, associate professor, full professor. And when do you become a full professor? Well, I only became a full professor when I was 54, so it took quite a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for making that clear. And then for emeritus professor, I guess that is when you are retired.
At a certain moment, I became 66 years and 9 months, and then I was thrown out. Because normally people get a pension then, but when you're a full professor, you become emeritus, like the Pope. The Pope also becomes emeritus.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. Yeah.
It's interesting how some of these things are changing, though, right? You said the system was different when you started, and even now it's changing, right? Now you can get the jus promovendus even as an assistant professor with the new rules, as long as you had enough experience promoting students. So you still have to promote a couple with somebody else, or 2 or 3, I don't remember the exact number, but then you can apply to get the jus promovendus and so promote students yourself, even though you're not at the stage in which you have the professor title, for example. I think it was trickier with the GON. Like some university allows you to wear the GON if you are on the committee, but you might not be having the jus promovendus, and here you might have the jus promovendus, but you might not have the GON. It's kind of completely all over the place. I think every place has its own rules about this.
I see.
But it's interesting to see how these things are also changing.
Yeah.
I guess it's also a sign of the fact that we have fewer and fewer full professors, and somehow a lot of the responsibility have percolated through to the level of associate or assistant professorships, and then I guess the boundary between them is getting more and more blurry.
Yeah.
Can I add something to this?
Of course.
When I was younger, when I was a PhD student or still a master student, then professors were like gods.
Yeah.
They were not appointed as administrated by the ministries, but they were appointed by the Queen.
By the Queen.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, and they were behaving like that. And then at some moment, all kinds of new regulations came, and the details are boring, but they became just civil servants, and they had to be judged. They had to do HR things, regulations. They were judged by the dean, or by the rector, or by each other, and there came a certain hierarchy. We became director. So I was a director, and I had to have such conversations with others, and of course some of them didn't want it because they had been my superiors in the time they were still close to God. So they went to the dean, and the dean asked me for what can I tell to this guy. So there was a lot of the transition was not easy for many because they didn't get used. I have been always a civil servant, so I was used to the fact that I'm not close to God.
Yeah.
But when you have been close to God and you are going to be civil servant, then you get angry.
I remember Jan Willems. He had to teach to chemistry students, and he refused because Jesus, I'm a full professor and I was appointed by the Queen. I'm not going to teach to chemistry students.
Yeah, that was a serious argument. Yes.
Oh.
And when I was an educational director in around 2000, then one of the computer science professors had developed something that I hadn't asked him to do, and he asked leave for that and so on. So I went to the dean, and I said I have not ordered him to do this, and he claims now that he has to teach less. He is allowed to teach less. So he came to me, I have done that and that and that, so I am allowed to teach less. And then I said, well, this doesn't fit. So I went to the dean and to the head of HR, and they agreed to me. And they were kind of whistled back. That's not a good expression, but they were called back by the rector, who said, no, this is a full professor. He was even Professor B. And you cannot do this. So we had to let him get away with that. And I'm not talking about 2000. It's not so very long ago.
Wait, Professor B, let me just clarify it for myself. Because here you can be full professor, but you can be also full professor.
Yeah.
Like the...
Yeah, that was Professor B was a full professor.
Yeah.
Like I was full professor.
Yeah.
Full professor.
I was full professor.
Now it's called hoogleraar 1 and hoogleraar 2.
Yeah.
The names are getting more and more boring.
Yeah.
No, but what is also an important point is that you got more and more responsibilities. And not only for the PhD students, but also for the department. You become head of the educational committee, or you become a director. I've been a director of teaching of the educational system, but also scientific director. And so that's a kind of extra responsibility. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And as a compensation, you don't have to teach to pharmacy students.
Okay.
You only have master classes where you have only very interested students.
Yeah.
So these are changes that are very important for your happiness.
Yeah.
But being a director is not always fun because you have always these HR problems, and I also always had an HR functionary next to me. Especially when you get crying secretaries in your office, you have to be very careful.
Yeah. Yeah, because you've been trained to be a researcher for many years. All the other stuff that you're suddenly responsible for.
Something different, yes, but okay, that's part of the job.
Yeah. Does it also go with the cost of research because you have all this new responsibility and?
Yeah, but you get a group and you do many things in commission. So I had a postdoc, and postdoc helped me with several PhD projects, and I had several postdocs, and so and also what happened to me is that I got a huge network in Spain, in Barcelona, in Dijon, in the States, and I wrote with many people together, and then sometimes you met each other somewhere, and then you worked hard on it, and then it was a little bit lower because you had to be the director, and so on. So that's a kind of way to spread the work, and to still remain active.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think that listeners should be aware of the fact that we do the main activity is not only teaching, but it's doing research, writing papers, supervising PhD students, and that it's like a conspiracy that the university management tries to keep you away from doing that. By making you director of the teaching institute. I was even a study advisor at a certain moment.
Me too.
And but indeed, as Henk says, when I would travel abroad to Japan or to Australia, then I would be freed of these duties, and then you could really do a lot.
Yeah.
It was like a miracle sometimes, when you had only time to think about mathematical research, and then the most beautiful things came out.
Oh, interesting to hear. Yeah. Then I also have a question, because you said that you're still writing popularized mathematics
and
books.
papers even.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because you're saying, well, once you turn the retirement age, you are kicked out. But that also frees you of all the responsibilities that came with being a full professor. Does that also leave you more time now to do mathematical research, or are you done with it? Or
well, personally I'm done with doing research, but I enjoy writing this book with my colleagues. But it's different from Henk. I think Henk is still doing research.
Yeah. So when I got retired, I still had 4 or 5 PhD students left, and I helped them, and I have ex PhD students who are now having career somewhere in the Netherlands. And they write books with me, or I write books with them, but I let them do most of the work.
Sure.
and that's the same with research papers, and it's the same thing with these popularizing books. So yeah, there remains a lot.
Yeah.
And I have still a desk at the office 478.
Oh, nice.
You're welcome to visit me.
Are you there often? Or?
No, not so very often. But I'm trying to be there more now. But we have some sort of project also on the history of mathematics with Henk de Snow, the colleague. So we are writing also a big book there, and I reserved the month of August to make a start with that.
Nice.
You both mentioned a lot of supervising students, having postdocs, traveling, and then I wonder, these things require money, and I'm curious if the funding landscape has changed, and how much has changed throughout your career. Was it easier? Was it harder before?
You mean
traveling? Both finding money for traveling, finding money for hiring PhD students, for hiring postdocs.
It's a big.
It has changed a lot over the years.
Yeah.
When I was still a PhD and a young associate professor or assistant, these words didn't yet exist.
No.
Then the money was given by the university.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, all the money was given to NWO, the Netherlands scientific organization, and then you had to write projects for it. And when you were lucky, then you had a lot of money. I was lucky several times. And then now the money is much higher. The prices are much higher. But I had, I think, for all of the Netherlands, something like 1.2 million for all mathematics in dynamical systems. Mm-hmm. And I could use a lot of that also for myself. And still, after I left, the group was using up my money. I didn't care. I didn't care. It was good. Yeah. And you could travel from that. And you were responsible for what you did. You had to give all the bills.
receipts.
Yeah, all the
yeah.
receipts, yes.
Well, for me, at a certain moment, I was really fed up of writing grant proposals, because it was some kind of therapy that you had to write proposals which would then be rejected, because there was just not enough money to
No, there's a lot.
to spread. So at a certain moment, I got all these Chinese PhD students.
Oh, yeah,
At that time, we were still in a good relationship with China. So people from China, students from China, would apply for a PhD position in the Netherlands, and that would be financed by the Chinese government.
Yeah.
So I think I had like 5 or 6 Chinese PhD students in the end.
Yeah, me 3.
Yeah.
So also a different kind of funding than normally.
Well,
Yeah.
they were funded by the Chinese government.
Yeah.
There was even at a certain moment a plan to make to start a University of Groningen in China.
I remember there was
Yeah.
a big noise about this blowing up when I had just arrived to Groningen.
Yeah. In Yantai.
And
Yantai, yeah.
the point was that there would be a party member scrutinizing the entire happening in this Chinese town. And the students didn't know that in advance. And when they heard that in the university council, they resisted. We don't want that.
Yeah.
In China, this is normal. There's always a party member
The Communist Party.
scrutinizing. Communist Party member.
Yeah, it's not a party like with drinks, but a Communist Party.
Party? No, Communist Party. Yeah.
So, going back then to things that have changed, do you think the mathematical community have changed in the span of your career, and in which sense?
Well, I mean, we have now 50% or even more of international students in mathematics. Also, the number of female students has increased. When I started studying mathematics in 1974, we had 105 first-year students, and there were 5 women.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
And now it's 50-50, I would say.
Yeah, depends per year, but it's way better than 5 in the 100.
Yeah. But do you think, Henk, that mathematicians changed?
Well, what I see is that in the beginning, let us say academic research until about 1990 was very relaxed. It was curiosity driven.
Yeah.
And if you were a professor and you had a PhD student for a while, you said, well, the next 10 years I don't want a PhD student, I'm going to write a book.
Right.
Then it was okay. And after that, the financing system changed. NWO got all the money. And then we got a rat race of proposals.
Right.
Yeah.
And rat race of proposals has changed the character of research. Because you have to make a proposal. The bosses have to make a proposal. And then the student has to carry out this project.
Right.
Yeah.
The students are not too free anymore to find their own problems.
So,
It has become more difficult to improvise. Of course, you still do that. And you also know that the moneymaker doesn't care so much what you exactly do as long as the PhD is successful. But it has changed. And it was in America, that was already much longer.
Yeah.
And I have seen that also there. And the research talks were all the same. They had some schabloon from, how is this program called?
PowerPoint.
Like PowerPoint, yes.
Yeah.
And they had that already. And you got candidates for a job. And they all had exactly the same talk, only the subject a little bit different. So there was a uniformity. And I've seen that also grow here. That they all learn to be smooth. You have to publish a lot. So sometimes you have to be a little bit stingy with the details and the depth, because you have to publish.
Yeah.
You have to publish 2 or 3 papers a year.
Yeah, I remember.
And
that.
before you, if you did not publish for a year, but after that you wrote a very beautiful paper.
Yeah.
That was okay. So that has changed a lot, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it has also positive aspects. Yeah, you are talking about it a little bit in a negative way, I think. But when I was a PhD student, I mean, I just did research, and Jan Willems always said, "Oh, you do what you like." but I didn't know what I liked. I had to find out myself. As a supervisor myself, you also have to realize that you have to teach the PhD students something. Like, how do you write? How do you write?
Yeah.
How do you write a piece of text that people can understand?
Yeah.
And that is something that was not paid attention to in my time. Or give a presentation. We let our PhD students give a presentation, and everybody can so that they can practice.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, a positive point.
Yeah, I grant that to you. Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, supervision has become real supervision where you actually work together.
I remember when I wrote my first paper, my overall first paper. I sent it to a journal, and the reviewer said, "This is really the product of hard working, but there's only one problem: it's virtually ununderstandable."
So that's the positive thing, is that there has been more attention to that, and the negative thing of that is that you can write many empty papers.
True.
It's a kind of balance.
Yeah, but I mean, you hope that when you write an empty paper, that it gets rejected by the journals.
No, but there are journals, very many journals on the world, and if you are sufficiently famous, they will publish everything you write. Not this publisher of our book.
But I mean, there are in every field there are top journals, and they will see whether something is empty or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then on the other end, the role of the supervisor is also there to check it beforehand if it was empty or not, right?
I had a PhD student, and he wrote a paper, and it was only finished after 14 feedbacks.
It's interesting to hear how the funding and the way that research is being conducted has changed over the years, over 40 years or something. Yeah. 1990, you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think that this publish of perish pressure, putting away this freedom of letting your curiosity wander, has impacted negatively the way things are evolving. Like that, I notice it for myself, what you were saying, that those moments in which somehow I get some space where I am not operated by a million meetings, administrations, projects and whatnot, then I suddenly can get back on track of what I was doing, and then I suddenly get the new ideas or the ideas for what might become a proposal, but I really need that space to make it work. If I don't have this somehow tension-free space in which I don't have the deadline, but I have time to just explore for the sake of doing it, not for getting something, I think for me it makes a huge difference, and it's getting harder and harder to find the space.
I to be frank, I think that only after my 60th year or something, I really got into the situation that former professors had already from the 20th on. Yeah. That I could just do what I wanted.
Yeah, indeed.
But before that, I had exactly between say 1990 and 2010, I had to walk in the treadmill of proposals, and then we had such a nice meteorological project, and they were financed by the British Met Office, and they were and the KNMI, and so we had to do that. We had to be successful. You had to give. So this was very much agenda driven. It was still fun. Yeah, but half fun.
Yeah,
half fun.
There is another thing that you mentioned that I would like to highlight: the fact that you said at some point you were just you had enough of writing a proposal to just get rejected. If one looks at the statistics, indeed, the funding agencies have between 10 and 18, 20% of success rates, depending on the type of proposal and the size. But in average, I would say 12, 13%. So it means that basically 1 out of 10 goes through. Yeah. And when you look at our CVs, you see, that person has gotten 1 million, that person has gotten so many PhD students. But you never see neither the stress of all the rejection nor the rejection themselves. So somehow you only see the successful stories that we have, but you don't see how much effort lies and hides behind those success stories.
No, you don't. No. No, and you don't see the losers. It's like neoliberalism. It's a system with losers.
But I think it's important to remind people that when they see rejections, I always tell our PhD student that if your paper is not rejected, it means you didn't aim high enough with your journals. Like, you should be aware of those rejections because they are not the outliers, but they are actually the norm in the job.
Yeah, indeed.
And then at some point you will have the satisfaction, but those are always there laying behind, like all the times you get frustrated because your idea didn't work. But that's normal. It's just, it's not you, it's the way it works somehow.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. On average, you would have to write 10 proposals to get 1 grant. Like, does it take a lot of time to write it? I have no clue.
Yeah, but you can reuse. You can reuse material when you write it well, and you know how the subjects are interrelated. And sometimes you make a new start, but you use elements from previous proposals. Okay. So you have to keep very well what you have done.
Yeah, right.
And still
in a certain period, it was not that incredibly difficult to get a grant. I mean, between 2000 and 2010, it was quite okay. Yeah, it became worse after that.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that.
We had the clusters, the mathematics clusters, and you had DISC.
We had DISC,
and so there was money which what came now from NWO, and that gave lots of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's true. And after that, they stopped again. But then I was already about to retire.
Yeah. And I got all these Chinese students.
I had also 3.
Yeah.
Sorry to disrupt the discussion again. I want to go back to something you said. You said, how do you choose an interesting problem as a problem that other people like? So I'm curious to know a bit more from you two. What was the way you were choosing your problems, and what was the way you were judging or gauging if they were interesting enough from this point of view?
In the first place, you would look at which problems were in fashion, because in fact, I was trying to publish journal papers. That's one criterion. What is in fashion? What are the problem areas that papers are about in the journals that I wanted to publish in journals on systems and control? And within that problem areas, I would choose something interesting, something that I liked. Mm-hmm. This is a very vague answer.
I see like a combination between your interest and the goal.
Yeah, because you can of course write a paper about any subject that people don't find interesting, but then you can forget about publishing it. So you have to be a little bit pragmatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and within those problem areas, there are always some problems that you thought, hey, that's interesting. I can use my knowledge there.
Was it the same for you, Henk?
Well, I was in an area where it was quite easy to find interesting problems. But then you had to balance between the following 2 things. It should be sufficiently interesting and it should be doable.
Yeah.
because you get a PhD student, you don't know in advance how good he or she is. And then you give several times I have had to change completely the subject proposal, but the NWO and the KNW, they didn't care as long as there is a PhD succeeded. But because it's very easy to find an interesting problem that nobody can solve. Very, very easy, and they are even listed in the literature.
Yeah.
So you have to find something that is doable, and you have to nowadays in NWO also want you to give a schedule how to reach the goal, and that's also ridiculous. But it's a way to make it at least doable. They think everything is algorithmic, and that's bullshit. Mm-hmm. But okay. So what is in the last half year of the career of the student? How many papers is he going to write about that subject? And the student doesn't even exist.
No.
This is one of the things that we didn't mention, but the administration of the proposal engineering is terrible, and everybody knows that it's nonsense, and still you have to do it.
I have a curiosity related to the publications of a PhD student. Right, when I was doing my PhD, it was common, especially in some areas of mathematics, to have your PhD done and then publish your results, instead of having your results and then having your PhD being a collation of the results. Yeah. Like it really depended a lot on the field, but like in some parts of algebra or number theory, in fact, also for my thesis, we got the results, we made the thesis, and then they became paper afterwards.
But that changed also in this. publish or perish thing.
Yes.
So when I did my PhD, I wrote a booklet first, and after that I wrote 2 papers. And I saw the Americans a little bit, well, why didn't you write earlier your results? And then at some moment it changed, and they said to obtain a PhD, you have already to have written 2 or 3 research papers. When you are in biology, you have to write 10 research papers.
Yeah.
And then these papers together count for your PhD since the 90s.
Yeah.
Writing papers during our PhD project also helps in structuring things. I mean, I would do it as follows. I would make every PhD student write a paper every year. And that would then be a chapter in his or her thesis. And the advantage is that you already know that the text was okay, because you would give feedback on the paper. And then after 4 years, the PhD student would write an introductory chapter. And the chapters would consist of the papers that the person wrote. Mm-hmm. And the advantage is indeed that if you want to get a postdoc position somewhere after your PhD, you have to be able to show that you already wrote a lot of papers. Don't you agree, Henk? I mean, you cannot say like I only wrote a PhD dissertation, but I didn't write anything, and hope that you can get a postdoc position somewhere.
Since the 90s, that culture has changed.
Yeah.
That culture has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's funny to hear all of this because I talked to Harry a little bit before this episode, and you said, "Oh, has mathematics changed? No." And I think, maybe the mathematics hasn't changed, but if I hear you guys talking, everything surrounding mathematics
has changed
a lot.
The whole culture around mathematics has changed, around science.
Can I don't know if this is a question that you have an answer to, but seeing that everything has changed a lot in the last, say, 40 years, how do you think things will change in the next coming 40 years? Do you have an idea about this? If you don't, that's also fine, but I'm just curious.
But I like to add something on what we just said. The financing of the university is based on the number of PhD degrees that the university produces. So the business model of the university is a PhD factory.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a complaint. So I don't want any positive comments on this. And I know people who quit. Floris Stakers, my previous supervisor and later friend, he quit because he hated university to be a PhD factory where it was almost forbidden to do curiosity-driven research.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something very bad. It's a complaint against the entire system.
Yeah.
I agree.
And do you think, so from what I've been hearing, this trend has been going for a couple of decades. Do you think this will continue to be even more expressed in this way?
I'm afraid that
at some point...
Yes, I'm afraid we don't know, but I'm afraid this will continue. When this is a kind of administrational kind of thing, and they have the tendency to grow worse.
Okay.
Well,
but I'm not sure, of course.
A lot of cut downs on the budgets of the universities in the plans of the new government.
Yeah, that's true.
But to be honest, I don't know how things will develop in the future. Yeah.
What do you think will be necessary to turn this trend around? That you think is a bad trend?
That would be good. If I would have hoped that when Robert Dijkgraaf would have remained a Minister of Education, that he might have tried to turn this tendency down, because I think almost everybody that is in this system experiences this as something not good.
Yeah.
Of course, then the counter-argument always is, yes, but if you let everything free, then it becomes a mess. Yeah, but now it's also a mess.
Yeah.
So you have to maybe to find some intermediate way.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, just to say something positive, I am not hopeful about the recent cuts. There are strikes being planned and whatnot, because here in the Netherlands they will be substantial for the university. But what I'm hopeful for is that it's now a few years that there is a wind of change, like this change, for example, of letting Jus Promovendus go down and allow people that have already promoted students and have proven they know how to be supervisor and how to guide them toward becoming researcher, now being able to have their own students. Yeah. A lot of small things, but there are a lot of pressures in the right places. There is a lot of pressure against the number of paper and more towards the quality of paper, which, fair enough, it's it's an arbitrary metric, if you want, right? How you define a good paper, but somehow it's something that experts can pretty much agree on when a paper is good or not. So I think this shift going back toward quality over quantity, of the supervision, of the recognition of the type of research you're doing, also a bit more attention toward curiosity-driven research. I mean, we always have to do the societal impacts. We always have to think big on the impact in other fields and whatnot. But at least when I was in panels from NWO, there was no stigma against something that was studied for the sake of understanding and not for getting any short-term outcome. Of course, it's hard. It's hard to justify, and it's annoying to have to write so many grants that are not being accepted, even when they are very good. So there are surely many things to fix.
Many.
But I think that at least I can see the will of the researcher in pushing against some of these distorters of the system and in trying to find some new or old or a hybrid model that might work better. So I am not completely hopeless on this.
But you are still in middle of your career, so I can imagine that you talk like this.
Yeah, I want to believe, like the posters from X-Files.
But
I'll help you hope.
On the other hand, when I started my academic career, when I became an assistant professor in the University of Eindhoven, there were also big difficulties. There were only 25 first-year students in mathematics at that time. So I remember after my first day in my new job, a colleague of mine, he said, "Well, I'm very pessimistic. I don't think we will work here still in 2 years." But that has really improved a lot. I mean, now we have an acceptable number of first-year students also because of the fact that there are now international students coming in. Hopefully also in the future, because that's also something that this new government doesn't like for some reason.
We have a very interesting government now.
Yeah, very interesting.
But I mean, everything you said throughout the conversation actually makes me hopeful, because you have pointed out multiple times that things have changed all the time, because society changed, because administration changed, because government changed, and sometimes it gets harder, and sometimes you find new ways, and sometimes things improve. So somehow it feels like we resist change, but it's unavoidable. So we might as well try to steer it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to mention the trouble you have in the tenure track system.
What is the
tenure track system? Is that in the system? I don't know how actual this still is, but that's the way you get promoted during this career line that Harry sketched.
Yeah.
And you have to be judged all the time and so on. And then you have also to fill in lots of very ridiculous things, like in the proposal engineering. And I remember that I was on such committees a lot, and everybody on the committee detested the process. But still the candidate had to go through it. And for instance, with one of our nearest colleagues, we tried to coach him. You have to play this game. Even if you hate it, but you have to play this game, otherwise you don't get there.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to.
Yeah.
He resisted. So he didn't get promoted. And I think, I'm hoping that there will be enough resistance also from the members of the committees who have to do the will of the dean and the minister to say, well, we are not going to go along with this any longer.
Yeah.
But in my time, they still did it. And this is a kind of ridiculous thing. And that resistance from within can help.
Yeah,
so I agree to that.
The tenure track system, for example, in Groningen, since I arrived here, it changed twice already.
Yeah.
I would say every time for the better. It's improved. It's not perfect. I have lots of complaints, but I think what we have now is better than what we had 3 years ago. It's better than what we had 6 years ago. So at least I think that you can see things are going in a good direction there as well. Also, from what we hear from the people in the committees, the way also some of the criteria are interpreted has changed drastically, I would say. But then time will tell, right? This new system has just started, so I cannot say how it will go and how it will be really interpreted before 3 or 4 years when we will have actual results.
No, 40 years is also very far ahead.
Yeah, that's true. Was an ambitious question. I'm wondering, you guys have had a very nice, long mathematical career. This might be a difficult question to answer, but I was wondering what you're most proud of in your mathematical career. Is there like a certain moment or a certain thing? You can also name multiple that you're proud of course. I can imagine that it might be difficult to choose. Harry?
The fact that I was in the end promoted to full professor is something that I'm very proud about, because I really had to deliver things. I had to deliver numbers, number of PhD students that I supervised, and I had to deliver a number of grants I got approved.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that makes me very proud that I reached that, because it was my ambition to become a full professor.
Yeah.
That's the thing that makes me most proud. And of course, more on the content-wise, I was the co-author of a couple of papers, and I'm very proud about 3 of those that get cited in literature many times. I will not tell what these papers are about, but that's something that I'm very proud about. That at a certain moment I said, that was about 10 years ago, I said I want to write at least 3 more papers that will really have impact. And I'm proud about the fact that that happened in these 10 years.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of doing that in 1 month or 1 year, but it was over a period of 10 years that I managed to write these 3 impactful papers.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine that it's something that you can definitely be proud of it. Like it's something that you've worked towards for a long time. And then seeing your ambition become reality, that must be great. Yeah. Henk, do you have something similar or something else?
Yeah, it would be very boastful to mention all the things that I earned by my work, and so I will say something about the content. There is a piece of mathematics that is started with Kolmogorov in 1954, and it is about multiperiodic motions with more frequencies that lie on tori, and that kind of mathematics is in analysis. And it works a lot in astronomy and in physics, but a lot in astronomy. And what I and my group, my school, if I may be so proud to say that, have done is to make that accessible and part of the general dynamical systems theory.
Oh.
And that is so that you see how it in generic systems, how it works and how it works in bifurcations.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm doing nowadays is I write an overview paper on this, and it's 70 pages, a long paper.
A long career, so.
Yeah, so I became a member of the academy, the Royal Academy, I got a knighthood. I'm a knight of the Order of the Netherlands Lion, with Willem-Alexander is my chief. Yeah. And I have a career award recently. I have to laugh a little bit about that. So I got was also a lot of praise from outside.
Recognition also.
Recognition.
I guess. Yeah.
And about impact, yeah. Some of these things have quite some impact, but for a pure mathematician, I have quite a high H index. Uh-huh. Applied mathematicians have much higher. But so I think I'm quite successful. If I die now, I can say I have not lived in vain.
Well, I don't think everybody lives in vain. But
no, I don't know that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I like to mention that I had quite a few PhD students during my career, but I also like to mention that 4 of them were women.
Yeah, nice.
And in periods where probably not that many women were doing a PhD.
No, if it's only a few years after 5 out of 100, then that's very impressive. Yeah.
Which is interesting because I've noticed that this changes a lot between countries. Like in Italy, there are more female.
In Brazil also.
In Brazil, in Spain.
About India.
Very much.
Yeah.
So it.
But then it's also worth mentioning that not too many of them become professor. So you don't see. This is a cruel
this
thing.
Remained hard still. Yeah. I mean, since we are talking about this, there is a question I would like to ask you, because I see that our job is quite demanding. We have growing, as you said, number of responsibility during the careers. You have research, teaching, administration, supervision of PhD, supervision of students, committees, national, internationals, university-wide. And it's more than 40 hours a week. And so how did you make it work? How did you balance your private life with being a mathematician, with all these commitments? And What kind of compromises did you have to make?
I think I forgot. I just did it. My family has always been the most important thing in my life. I would never work in a weekend, serious.
Mm-hmm.
But I did work every evening.
Yeah.
But nobody cared because other people watched television, and my wife and I did other things. She read books, and I did research. And that wouldn't mean that I would be sitting in a room by myself, but I would just have a piece of paper in front of me and a pencil and try to come up with something smart. Huh?
Yeah.
So.
But you did have then a very strict work-life balance. If you say you don't work on the weekends as a rule, then that's a way to, I think, very healthily.
That was my principle. I didn't do that. Just simply didn't do it.
Yeah.
Because I had to go to the soccer field with my sons, and I had to do things with my wife, and my hobbies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in some way, it worked.
Yeah.
I must say that sometimes I remember one time that I was going on the ferry to Vlieland, and I was staring over the water, and I was still thinking about this mathematical problem, and I thought, Jesus, this is not good. I have to stop this. I'm on holidays. But it's also a matter of experience. In the beginning of my career, that happened quite a lot, but later on, I learned how to not do that anymore. Don't think about mathematics or the job.
Yeah. So to set boundaries.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Was it similar for you, Henk? Or?
Well, I did not have these principles. So I worked a lot, but when I was not traveling, I had also a lot of room for my family. But I think my family suffered from my long travels.
How long were you away?
Well, the longest was half a year in Boston University, but I've also been many times for 6 weeks or 3 weeks in Brazil or in Atlanta or in Dijon or in Barcelona. It was always great fun. And at the end, when the kids became older, sometimes my wife traveled with me, and then they had a nice holiday in Barcelona. I liked that, or in Dijon.
Yeah.
And even in America, in this half year, they came the last 6 weeks. So we tried to integrate, but there was a lot away.
Yeah.
And they had to do everything with the dog and with each other. So that I think it took some sacrifice. But then, I brought in the money, and they could go to music lessons, and they go to horse driving and so on. But I can still notice now that there's some distance that I would have liked to avoid in my career. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
The career is demanding.
Yeah.
And if you don't say stop here, then it goes on.
Yeah. Thank you for being so honest.
Sharing.
But I also got my kids a lot from school. You know, on Tuesday afternoon, nobody could. I went to the school with my car, and I took up the kids of ourselves and of my brother.
Oh yeah.
But okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's I think it's a sacrifice.
Thank you for sharing. Did you know beforehand that it would demand such sacrifices?
No, I did not know. I did not realize so much how this works. I saw also the people around me, and they gave not a good example in this direction.
Right.
And it was good for my career. That I have to say that. But and my wife stimulated me a lot. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sorry or something like that. But I noticed this thing, and maybe a warning for other people.
I think it is important to hear. I'm actually very happy of both what you share, because I think it's important to hear that you should be careful of the example you take around you, that you might benefit from it, but it's about you to set and decide what is your priority, and also that you can decide not to work on weekends or evening, and you can still make it all the way up until emeritus. So it's really a matter of principle and of deciding what you want to do and being mindful of what you're doing. Sometimes you can say, okay, now it's okay to travel, but perhaps I won't do it next time. But at least you do it consciously of what might be required of you. And
the awareness
what can happen.
awareness is important, and I think I was aware, but I still think that I might maybe have made some little bit different choices.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing. Thank you both for being here. It was a wonderful conversation. It was full of useful and interesting insight from my side.
Yeah, I agree.
And since this is the last episode, I would like to thank a few people. I would like to thank Henrieke Krijgsheld, which drew our logo. I would like to thank Ilse Klarenbeek, which actually gave the name to this podcast. It was her idea, and she spent time with us brainstorming what we were doing and also helping us making it more known at the university and more advertised at the university. I would like to thank Young Cook, which made this room where we're making the recording available for us, and also FSC Radio that provided their own room when we couldn't record the podcast. Finally, I would like to thank Marit. I'm really sorry that you're leaving. In fact, she will have her master presentation like in 2 hours, and nevertheless, she is here with us recording today. I mean, it's been a great experience, and I am immensely thankful for you for all the help in setting this project up and making it happen. And well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Marcello. I would also really like to thank you for giving me this opportunity. When you approached me more than a year ago with this idea, I was super enthusiastic, and I think that we worked it out really well. I'm really happy and content with what we've done. I'm really proud of it. It has been super fun and great. And I think next year you will also have a great time with Anna, the new host for the new season. I would also like to thank people who have approached me or Marcello in any way, shape or form, saying that they like the podcast or that they've taken like some message from it. That has been really motivating, and I'm super glad that we have been able to like not only entertain people but also change the views of some people. Yeah, and with that, I also want to thank our guests, of course. I think we've had many very interesting conversations that I loved to be a part of. And I want to thank the listeners for tuning in every time and listening to us. So with that, I think we can end this last episode of the season. And of course, I will be listening in next season. And I hope the listeners will do too. And as always, if you like this, please share it with your friends.